Imagine a ruler so depraved, so blood-soaked, so unspeakably unhinged, that even in the twisted annals of ancient Rome, his name is whispered like a curse. His story isn't a myth, it isn't exaggeration, it's history, and it's terrifying. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, but history calls him by the nickname soldiers once gave him in jest, Caligula. That name would become synonymous not with laughter, but with lunacy, with terror, with a descent into imperial madness so grotesque that 2,000 years later, we are still reeling. Born into the lap of imperial privilege, Caligula should have been a beacon of hope. His father, Germanicus, was a war hero beloved by the people. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, came from the divine bloodline of Augustus himself. The boy was a living emblem of Roman virtue, paraded around in military camps as a child mascot dressed in miniature armor, giggling in the shadow of swords and standards. Soldiers adored him, calling him Caligula, a cute nickname that would one day drip with irony. But even as that boy toddled through camps on the Rhine, back in Rome, rot was creeping into the very foundations of power. Emperor Augustus was aging, his chosen heirs kept dying, and in desperation, he turned to a man he hated, Tiberius. A cold, reluctant ruler, a man with the charm of stone and the warmth of ice. To calm the people, Augustus forced Tiberius to adopt Germanicus, hoping the beloved general would one day take the throne. That never happened. In 19 AD, Germanicus died under mysterious circumstances in Syria, and Rome trembled with suspicion. Agrippina accused Tiberius of murder. In response, the emperor shattered her life. He exiled her to a desolate island, had her sons imprisoned, one driven to suicide, the other starved to death. Only Caligula survived, the last flickering ember of a once mighty lineage. His childhood ended not in adolescence, but in blood and betrayal. Then came the summons. In 31 AD, Caligula, just 19, was invited to join Emperor Tiberius on the island of Capri. It was no paradise. Capri was a den of nightmares. Tiberius, having abandoned Rome, ruled from his coastal villa like a perverted deity. Whispers spoke of children defiled and thrown off cliffs, of public tortures and orgies that blurred the lines between entertainment and horror. Caligula entered this snake pit not as a guest, but as a test. Tiberius's courtiers poked him, mocked him, tried to goad him into speaking ill of the man who had murdered his family. But Caligula played the part of a mute statue, silent, observant, dangerous. He curried favor with the emperor not through flattery but through adaptability. He joined the debauchery. He tasted the cruelty. Tiberius began to trust him, perhaps even like him. Soon, Caligula was no longer just a witness to sin. He was part of it, a willing participant in a court of sadism. Tiberius once remarked, "I am nursing a viper for the Roman people." If only he had understood just how prophetic those words would become. In 37 AD, the emperor died, or perhaps he was murdered. One rumor suggests that Caligula suffocated him with a pillow and stood silently in the room until the old man drew his final, strangled breath. Whatever the truth, the result was the same. Rome's tyrant was gone, and in his place rose a young, charismatic figure with the name of a god and the blood of an empire. The city erupted in jubilation. Caligula was seen not as a usurper, but as the rightful heir to the golden age of Germanicus. When he entered Rome, the crowds howled like worshippers, showering him with petals, shouting his name like it was a hymn. The Senate embraced him. The people adored him. Even hardened legions wept with joy, and for a few fleeting months, Caligula lived up to the myth. He ended the treason trials, restored stolen property, slashed taxes. He freed prisoners and elevated his family. Rome was drunk on hope. Gladiator games flowed like wine. The streets rang with laughter for the first time in decades. At last, it seemed, a ruler had arrived who was not a tyrant, but a savior. Then, everything changed. That October, Caligula fell gravely ill. His skin turned gray, his eyes glazed. He hovered at death's door for weeks, and Rome collectively held its breath. Senators offered their lives to the gods. Families wept in temples. When he finally recovered, it felt like a miracle. But something had come back with him, something evil. The man who rose from that sickbed was not the same. He summoned the senators who had offered their lives and smiled coldly. "You said you would die for me," he said. "So, when?" The executions began. What had once been mercy turned into mayhem. Caligula claimed divinity. He demanded worship. He dressed in gold, in silk, in women's robes and thunderous armor. He appeared in public as Apollo, as Venus, even as Jupiter himself. He raped women, publicly humiliated senators, and laughed while doing it. He turned palaces into brothels and dining halls into slaughterhouses. He married multiple women, sometimes simultaneously, only to discard them like broken toys. He ordered nobles to send their wives and daughters to his bed, and they did, out of fear. The closest person to him was Julia Drusilla, his younger sister. The rumors had existed since childhood, but now they became undeniable. Caligula elevated her to the status of wife. The army was ordered to swear loyalty to her. When she died in 38 AD, the emperor shattered. He declared her a goddess, made the empire worship her, built temples in her name. But grief didn't soften him. It curdled into something worse. He mocked senators by making them run beside his chariot. He burst into laughter during feasts, and when asked why, replied, "I've just thought I need only give the word, and you'd all be dead." The economy collapsed under the weight of his excess, so he turned to terror for profit. Reviving Tiberius's treason trials, he began accusing citizens at random. Their property was seized, their families destroyed, and the executions, slow, public, barbaric, became Rome's new form of entertainment. Parents were summoned to witness the torture of their children and forced to clap. Smiles were mandatory, tears were fatal. Yet even this wasn't the limit of his insanity. There's the story of the bridge across the Bay of Bauli. An astrologer once said Caligula had no more chance of becoming emperor than riding a horse across the bay. So what did Caligula do? He ordered hundreds of ships to be lashed together to form a floating bridge. Then he rode across it on horseback, wearing golden armor. The stunt caused a grain crisis, but it made a point: defy me, and I'll defy the gods themselves. Another time, he declared war on the sea, had his soldiers march to the shore of Gaul and collect seashells as the spoils of victory. He claimed to have conquered Neptune. The joke cost thousands of lives and untold treasure. He believed himself a god and expected Rome to agree. He ordered statues of himself placed in every temple. When word reached Judea, it nearly caused a revolt. It was only the delicate diplomacy of Herod Agrippa that prevented war. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Rome's elite whispered. The Senate seethed. The Praetorian Guard, once loyal, began to plot. On January 24, 41 AD, as Caligula exited a performance, assassins surrounded him. Led by Cassius Chaerea, a man he had publicly mocked, they stabbed him over and over. His guards fled. His screams echoed. Blood poured onto the marble. But the conspirators weren't done. They marched to the emperor's home and killed his wife Milonia Caesonia and his infant daughter Julia Drusilla. No heirs, no legacy, no trace. For a moment, the Republic stirred. Senators shouted for the restoration of democracy, but the Praetorian Guard wasn't done playing kingmaker. They found Caligula's uncle Claudius, stammering, shaking, and declared him emperor. The cycle continued. 13 years later, Rome would meet its next nightmare, Nero. Caligula was erased, his name struck from records, his statues demolished, his memory condemned, and yet he survives, not in marble, but in myth. Because Caligula is more than a mad emperor, he's a parable. He began as a boy with no power, no hope, no voice. He rose as a hero, he ruled as a god, and he fell as a monster. We like to think only the evil crave power, but Caligula teaches us something far worse, that power doesn't merely attract the wicked, it can make us wicked. Absolute power doesn't just corrupt, it reshapes, it mutates, it devours, it turns little boot into the boot, pressing down on the throat of an entire empire. And that perhaps is the most chilling truth of all, because if it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone.